Right, so we've got a question here from Michelle in Ripon, North Yorkshire. Which wrestler, past or present, would you like to have a wrestling match with?
Bret the Hitman Hart.
Why?
Why? Because I think he could even make me look good in a wrestling ring.
Yeah, like my one is pretty much the same. I'll go for Sean. Not so much for the making me look good, which he would do, but he'd take all the bumps. And I'd probably end up doing the job, but it'd be the only bump I'd take. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 1 of the Heel Turn Wrestling Podcast. I am Titan, back again with you, and I'm not back alone. I have a co-host, finally, Mr. DC. How are you doing, sir?
All good, thanks. Yeah, all good. Happy to be here, yeah.
Happy to be here. Well, that's an improvement on my last co-host. I didn't have a last co-host. I don't even know what I'm on about. Right, today we are here to talk about something very special in terms of wrestling, and it's something we have bonded over as friends, and it's something that we are very fond of, and it's a pay-per-view from 1997. Do you want to let the people in, those who haven't already seen the thumbnail, which I'm sure they will have done by now, do you want to let the people know what are we talking about today, Daniel?
Okay, so we're going to be talking about One Night Only, the UK pay-per-view from 1997.
We certainly are, and that pay-per-view is very special to us. Why? Why is it so special to us, Daniel?
Many reasons. It was the first pay-per-view we ever attended as friends, yeah.
We certainly did. And just out of interest, was that the first time you'd ever been to a WWE show before?
WWE, yes, yep.
Yeah, so that was mine too, and it was just before we get into the actual the wrestling side of it, we are going to keep circling back to our own personal experiences. Do you remember when we were first informed that this was happening? Do you remember who told you? Because I remember where I was and what was happening when I was told. Do you remember?
You're going to have to go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, no, that's fine. So our good friend, Ricky, was at his nan's watching Raw, as he tended to do. And he rang me at my home on the landline. Remember them, kids? Yeah, landlines. They were phones you plugged into the wall.
Still remember your number?
Go on then.
38. I'm not going to say it, actually. Yeah, I know that.
Yeah, of course, yeah. Still got it, yeah. So if you can guess the other 5 numbers, please feel free to give me a call. Anyway, our friend Rick calls me and he says, did you know they're doing a show on my birthday? And our other mutual friend, Mr. Tully, was at my house at the time. I told him, and my mother and his mother were there, and it turned very much into a like a Cartman. Ma'am, can I have a one night only ticket, please? And yeah, I mean, it obviously worked, because we ended up 8 of us in the end, 3 parents and 5 smaller folks, me, you, Ricky, Mr. Tully and Mr. Tim Drage. Tim, if you hear this, how you doing, pal? I'm going to ask our editor Curtis to put the infamous photo of us 5 outside my home. If you could put that on the screen now. Now, the 2 gentlemen you see pulling their ears out and sticking their tongues out, that is myself and Rick. We were dressed as the Headbangers, because with stars like The Undertaker, The Hitman, Shawn Michaels and the British Bulldog, why wouldn't you dress like the Headbangers? And the 3 gentlemen in front are Mr. Tim Drage, Mr. Adam Tully and your good self, Daniel. And why are you flipping off my mother in that photograph?
That's the only time I could get away with it.
That is a very good point. Yeah, the most devastating opponent any of us faced was my mother. Love you, Mum. Don't hurt me. So that's our personal experiences as far as finding out that we were going to go to our first ever WWF show, and we were long-time fans at this point. And just again, instantly the excitement levels drew. While I unfurl my tongue again, the excitement levels grew immensely, knowing that we were going to be going to this WWE pay-per-view, the second only UK pay-per-view and the first UK exclusive pay-per-view, because the US wouldn't get this pay-per-view for another, I believe it was 2 months before they got to see it on that side of the Atlantic. So we're going to get into the actual what was going on in the wrestling world at the time. As far as WWE goes, what do you remember in and around, say from like SummerSlam 97 through One Night Only through to like, I guess, Montreal? What do you remember? What sticks out in that period? Because we're going through a real sort of shift in the wrestling industry, especially in WWE. What are your memories from that era?
Having not watched that period back for a long time, I think what really sticks out to me is probably, for me, this was kind of the prime era of wrestling.
Yeah.
Attitude Era for me, overrated, controversial opinion.
By Attitude Era, you mean like the sort of the 98, the crowning of Steve Austin into like the early 2000s?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah,
for me, this was my kind of personal favourite ever era.
I think again, that it's, you say controversial opinion, but for me, this era of wrestling is one of those where, in hindsight, it does to me stand up as the era that changed the business. Whereas at the time, because of how frantic the Austin McMahon stuff was, and it was very just high octane, and it just didn't stop. There was a lot more like nuance, a lot more. I don't know. It when you look back on 1997, just as one standalone year, when you go from January to December, and you look at how the business in WWE especially changed, you're right. It's a very, very, very pivotal time in wrestling. Is there a moment in that era where you go, right, that sticks out a mile, that sticks out in your mind?
97.
97, yeah.
Probably, I think SummerSlam was when everything started to peak a bit, and you had the main event. It was kind of the end of the new generation-y kind of era.
Definitely.
And I think when Bret spat at Shawn, everything just started to change a bit.
It was, yeah, because that was kind of there was obvious backstage heat. I mean, me and you, we were discussing this earlier. We were both readers of Power Slam magazine.
Yeah.
And we'd read that not only did Shawn and Bret not get on screen, it wasn't exactly plain sailing backstage. And to see that manifest itself with Bret spits at Michaels swings the chair, The Undertaker has to be counted down by Michaels, and Bret takes his then 5th WWF title.
Yeah.
It was almost like that was where the innocence of the new generation it died there.
Absolutely.
And you could make a case to say everyone's got their own opinion on when the Attitude Era started. You can probably, as a flashpoint, put it right there. The minute Bret spits at Shawn.
Yeah.
Because it was a total shift for Bret. Because although Bret had been like anti-America, pro-Canada, that was the moment where you were like, oh my God, Bret really is, You know, he really is like shades of grey now. He's not He's not just a wholesome, you know, hero that he always had been, even if it's just in Canada. But yeah, that is definitely a moment. I think for me, I think the moment that sticks out, being more of a I don't want to say an Austin guy, because I mean everyone to some degree was an Austin guy. I think just the rise of Steve Austin, and the kind of, in a roundabout way, how him getting injured again at SummerSlam 97 with Owen, the pile driver, him getting injured actually propelled him higher, because he wasn't wrestling, he was just coming out on television and he was just causing carnage. They had to be very creative in how they used him, because he couldn't take bumps, and they probably didn't know if he would ever take bumps again. Fortunately, we did get 3-4 years of prime Steve Austin, which I'm sure we're all grateful for. But they had to be really creative in how they used him, and from the time he got injured to the time he come back, which was actually at the Montreal Survivor Series, there's a lot of pinpoint moments, like that's when he just started stunnering members of staff. Like he stunned Jim Ross, he stunned Sergeant Slaughter, he stunned Jerry the King Lawler, and then he stunned Vince. And we see the very first, actually on the night after, the Raw after, one night only, we see the first stunner on Vince McMahon, the first of many. So yeah, 1997, huge year for wrestling. So now we've discussed our like memories of just the general wrestling landscape especially in WWF at the time. One night only specifically. I'm just going to ask you if you can just pull up on your device there the one night only card, because it was a great card, which we will get into. We're going to run through it here. So Daniel, if you can read out the match by match, I have the original one night only card here. So I want you to read out each match, not the results, just the match. And I will compare it with what the original card was, and we'll contrast and compare and see if we would have preferred the card we got versus the card we were originally promised. So what's the first match?
So you got Hunter Helmsley against Dude Love.
Yep, that's on here.
Tiger Ali Singh has a blast from the past.
It certainly is.
Against Leif Cassidy.
Oh wow, no, that wasn't on the original card.
Okay, the Headbangers.
Yes.
Against Los Boricuas.
Yep, that was on the original card. Yep.
The Patriot against Flash Funk.
Yep. No, not on there. No.
Okay, the Legion of Doom against the Godwins.
Yes, that's on the original card.
Vader against Owen Hart.
That's not on the original card.
Bret Hart against The Undertaker.
That's not on the original card.
And main event, Shawn Michaels against the British Bulldog.
That is on the original card. So I make that 1, 2, 3, 4 matches from the original announcement made it to the actual show. I'm now going to tell you the matches that were originally promised, and you tell me if you'd have preferred these matches to what we got. So the matches that were late additions were Tiger Ali Singh and Leif Cassidy.
Yep.
Would you have preferred to see Ken Shamrock versus Owen Hart over Tiger Ali Singh and Leif Cassidy?
Over that, yes, but over Owen against Vader, probably not.
Right, okay. That's an interesting take. So the next one, the Patriot versus Flash Funk. Would you have rather seen The Undertaker versus Ahmed Johnson?
Again, over that match, yes.
But not necessarily over Bret and The Undertaker?
Absolutely not.
Okay. This might swing it, because the other match we were promised but did not get, like you say, there was a Vader and Owen Hart.
Yeah.
The other match we were promised that we did not get was Bret the Hitman Hart versus Stone Cold Steve Austin, title for title, as a semi-main event, not the main event, because that was Bulldog and Shawn. So basically, Austin, Shamrock, and Ahmed Johnson all come down with injuries, so they end up combining the Undertaker and Brett because Ahmed and Austin weren't there. Shamrock does appear on the show, but he's not wrestling. Owen Hart ends up facing Vader as a late addition. So when you look at that card versus the card we got, again, there's certain matches where you look at it and you say, yeah, I wouldn't swap it for that. But just as, and you're a Brett guy, anyone who knows you knows you're a Brett guy. I mean, you're a Brett guy, you're engaged to a Brett girl. You've all got one thing in common with Brett, and the one thing in common you all have with Bret Hart is that you love Bret Hart. So, Austin versus Hitman, Undertaker versus Hitman. At the time, which is the more gripping to you? Now, we got Undertaker versus Hitman live. We saw it. We were there.
Yeah, I've got to take Austin Hitman.
Me too, because
it's the best match of all time.
It is, yeah, and yeah, absolutely, 100%. Still my best. With all due respect to Shawn and the Undertaker, Austin versus Brett.
Yeah, we got robbed of that.
Yes, we did. Yeah, Austin versus Hitman. That was the one. We did get robbed of that. You're right. So that was the original card, and personally, I lean towards the original card, but what we ended up getting was probably a more balanced, more of a standard WWF pay-per-view card at the time, because that was a full-on Super Show card they promised us. Yeah. And again, injuries happen. It's just the way the world works. Now, this is in a time, so September 1997, very different time to today. Just to give you some perspective, obviously me and yourself, Mr. Chettle, we lived it, we were there, we remember it, but we were youngsters. We didn't have these adult problems, first world problems. Well, they are, yeah, we didn't have bills to pay. That was parental stuff, wasn't it? Exactly. So, just a quick rundown. In September 1997, just a few stories of the day. We're just 3 weeks off the death of Princess Diana, which was worldwide news, and obviously very sad. We had just installed, for the first time in 18 years, a Labour government. How we could do with that again right now. And yeah, I know they say don't talk politics, but I can't help it. And just to keep things in keeping with 2022, Israel and Palestine are still knocking 7 colours out of each other, so no change there then. And here's a few things for you. So the average house price in 1997 was £60,000. A litre of unleaded petrol was 58 pence. And how many people do you remember saying, if it goes over £1, I'm never driving? And they all still drive.
Yeah.
Yeah. A pint of milk was 35 pence, and another one of our friends, Mr. Keyjack, will not like this one. A pint of beer was £1.80 in September 1997, but none of that affected us because we were too young anyway. The top movie at the time was In and Out by Kevin Kline. I must have missed that one. Yeah. Kevin Kline as the star. The top song at the time, again circling back to Princess Diana, was Candle in the Wind. And the other 2 big songs at the time were The Drugs Don't Work by The Verve and Men in Black by Will Smith. All classics in their own way. So, were you a Men in Black fan, Daniel?
Yeah, I'm just playing through Candle in the Wind in my head now.
Yeah, we've all got PTSD from the song. Obviously, it was for a good cause. It was a good cause, but you couldn't get away from the strains of Elton there, could you? Yeah, it was difficult. So that's just to give you a bit of tone for the time. So now we've gone through the preamble. Let's jump into the actual card. So. He says. So obviously we'll go back to where we were. We get to the we get to the show after my mum taking us the wrong way and me shouting at her from the back seat. We finally get there, and I was convinced we weren't going to get it in time because we're 10 minutes away, and you can hear music playing in the arena, and there's still a load of people in front of us, and then all of a sudden the floodgates just opened, and I guess they just thought, let them all in. So in we go. I can remember losing everybody because I was like, oh my God, it's Triple H coming out. And naturally, because that's what wrestlers do, they make entrances and they come out to wrestle, and I'm just standing there with my mouth open. What was it like walking into that arena and seeing the WWF setup for you for the first time? Were you sort of...
Yeah, it's just wide-eyed, really. I think really wide-eyed kid at the time. I was trying to get past the hilarity of Rick wearing that Shawn Michaels biker hat, like a leather hat.
Yeah, so unfortunately, all photographs from this period were on disposable cameras. And
that hat was amazing,
and I don't think we've got a photo of that, unfortunately, because if we had, we would be putting that up. Our friend Rick decided, as it was his birthday, he was going to make some WWF related purchases, and he bought a leather Stone Cold head bandana, and he bought the Shawn Michaels Village People biker hat. Not that there's anything wrong with that. And
absolutely not.
No, and not that we're implying anything, but Google the Village People. There's a biker, and Shawn Michaels used to dress like a member of the Village People back in the day, and our friend Rick bought it, and none of us made fun of him for it at all.
Absolutely not.
No, because we're nice young men.
But yeah, I remember walking in and Triple H was coming out. That's kind of my hazy memory of it. I just remember that kind of, what was it, like opera kind of music, wasn't it?
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he wasn't quite DX Triple H yet. We would get to that very shortly.
Yeah, you just kind of, everything's going at like 100 miles an hour at that age, isn't it? It's just so much. It's sensory overload, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. So we get into the match. Good back and forth contest with Triple H eventually coming out the winner, of course, with help from China. There was a promo prior to the match, Dude Love, on the big screen, and standard. As soon as they come over to the UK, we'll cram in as many stereotypes as we can. But to Mick Foley's credit, he didn't do the jolly good show, old chap. He just imitated Austin Powers, so we'll give him a pass. Yeah. So next up, we had Tiger Ali Singh versus Leif Cassidy, a main event anywhere in the world. I'm sure you'll agree. We weren't fans of Tiger Ali Singh, were we?
We were not.
No, and we can't exactly repeat what we said to him, can we?
Absolutely not.
No, and and just for the record, it was nothing racist, but there are standards on YouTube, and if we were to repeat it, it could be interpreted as us being nasty. So it was a different time, and we were very naughty boys, Your Honour. And we're very sorry, aren't we, Daniel? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I could see the despair. I could see the despair on your face. No, we were fans of neither competitor, and I can quite safely assume that a good portion of us probably went to the toilet at this point. Absolutely. Or went to buy some merchandise. Tiger Ali Singh ends up winning with his spinning heel kick finisher. Good for him. So up next, a big moment for me and our buddy Rick, because it was the Headbangers, and we went dressed as the Headbangers. So, being dressed as the Headbangers, we were having a wonderful time, and the match was fine. It was what it was. The Headbangers end up retaining. Mosh hits the bombs away on Miguel Perez and gets the 3 count, and we're all happy with that. It's fine.
Just quickly.
Yes.
So you dressed as the Headbangers.
Yes.
They used to wear skirts.
They did.
How did you replicate the skirts? I can't remember.
Are you serious?
I can kind of remember. I want to say bin bags.
Yes,
but...
it was.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so black bin liners.
Okay.
Black bin liners, and with the bottom cut out.
Yeah.
And I just wrapped it as tightly around my waist as possible, and then got sellotape to hold it.
Brilliant.
Rick was less patient with his, and if you actually look in the photo from earlier in the podcast, you'll actually see Rick has already removed his and he's just wearing shorts because, you know, again, got to look cool for a photo, whereas I'm not fussed.
Cool.
I was going to wear, and I even replicated Mosh's red and white tights by using bandages and a red felt tip pen because I'm punk rock. So the Headbangers get the win with Mosh's bombs away onto Miguel Perez. The Headbangers end up retaining their tag team titles. Wonderful stuff. Now at this point we get a couple of promos on the screen. We have Davey Boy Smith sitting with Jim Ross earlier in the day. Davey Boy Smith says he's dropped approximately £20 to deal with Shawn Michaels' superior speed. And he also, and this is going to become a very uncomfortable thing later on, he also dedicates the match to his sister, who is at the time struggling with cancer. And then we cut to a very different interview. We see Shawn Michaels, who is completely sober, clearly. He says, being interviewed by Sonny, which in retrospect is all kinds of uncomfortable. How would you describe Shawn Michaels' state of mind going into this big match?
I was trying to think back.
Yeah. I mean, so he's got that kind of, he's chewing gum and he's flirting with Sonny.
Look, after the Bulldogs promo, there's no way he can lose. Let's be honest.
No, you're right.
And then Shawn's kind of his usual in-between cocky self, isn't he, at that point?
Yeah.
And you just think, at this stage of the evening, there's absolutely no way the Bulldog can lose this match.
Absolutely not. And you think, right, well, Shawn's just being a heel.
Yeah.
You know, he's hitting on the girl, he's cocky, and he's dedicated it to his sister, who's poorly. Why? How could it go any other way? We'll circle back to that. But next up, we have another delightful offering from the WWF, and that is the Patriot versus Flash Funk. Now, essentially two baby faces going at it here. There's no stakes. The Patriot, however, instantly makes himself the de facto heel because, with all due respect to anybody who listens to this from the United States, if you are waving a flag of the country you are from in another country, you're gonna get booed. I have no problem with the United States or any other country. None always, if you're proud of where you're from, that's great. But there was no way he was going to get a babyface reaction from the crowd in Birmingham waving the United States flag. I know he was the Patriot. I know that was what he was meant to do, but no, he was the heel, and he got booed out of the building in Birmingham, Mr. Chettle. And so I guess that made us Flash Funk fans, if only for the evening.
Yeah, and purely because he was Too Cold Scorpio.
Yep, there you go. Too Cold Scorpio from WCW and ECW obviously he got saddled with let's call it a very Vince gimmick.
Yeah.
Vince's point of reference for a charismatic black fella would have been something from the 70s. That is why he wore a zoot suit and humongous boots. And
Who's the guy they tried to kind of recreate that with recently? Massive dude. Can't remember his name.
What, Flash Funk?
Kind of similar. He had like dancers and stuff.
Oh, No Way Jose?
No? Wasn't him. There's another guy. He had tattoos and he's a massive dude. And
NXT?
No.
Or WWE?
He had like similar to what they called the Funkettes.
Yeah.
He had a very similar gimmick. What was it?
Oh, no, not Velveteen Dream.
What was his name? That's going to wind me up now.
If you think of it before we finish.
Was it Brodus Clay?
Yes.
Yeah. They just tried to... They went down the exact same route with him.
Yeah, it was very, 70s with the disco ball, yeah.
I don't know why, it's never really worked.
Yeah, because it would have worked in the 70s when disco was a thing.
Yeah.
But again, we're talking Vince McMahon, his point of reference, again, he doesn't watch films, he doesn't watch films, he doesn't keep up with pop culture. Again, his last point of reference for a charismatic black guy would have been something from the 1970s. That's why he came out to disco music.
Yeah.
And he's called Flash Funk. It definitely wasn't funk, it was disco.
Yeah.
And Brodus Clay, 20 years later or 15 years later, is coming out with his Funkadactyls.
That was it.
The Funkadactyls, yeah. Naomi and Cameron. And it's just never going to land in this day and age because it's outdated, just like a lot of stuff Vince came up with later on in his career. But again, enough about 2022. Let's get back to 1997 now. With the next match, which is the Legion of Doom versus the Godwins, a match we had seen several times already this year. There was a bit of history to this match. The Godwins, Henry Godwin has suffered a broken neck. I don't know if you remember this. Henry Godwin took the Doomsday device, and if you think like of the Godwins and LOD, that's 4 big dudes.
Yeah.
That is 4 gigantic dudes. Henry Godwin on top of Animal's shoulders. Hawk completes the Doomsday device. Henry does the backflip to take the bump. Doesn't go all the way over. He lands on his head in May. I think it was either May or June. And breaks one of his discs in his neck and puts him on the shelf for a while. In the meantime, the Godwins have since turned heel. They've ditched the colourful shirts. They just come out in their dungarees now. And they're not very nice hog farmers now. There's no more Hillbilly Jim. There's no more messing with the country boys. And, if you've ever heard the original Godwins theme song, Don't Go Messing with the Country Boys, it is a banger. But, so this is heel Godwins versus the Legion of Doom. Standard 4-way, big guys, clubbering. And just to sort of carry on the continuity of the feud, they hit a spike pile driver on Henry Godwin's bad neck to pick up the victory. Any memories from this match before we get into the next segment?
None, but I really do miss pile drivers.
Yeah, I think a lot of people do. A lot of people who have been in the business. I mean, I listen to the Jim Cornette podcast a lot, and he made a very good point on the pile driver issue. If you know what you're doing, it's one of the safest moves to take. The problem is, it's been outlawed now for so long. They're running out of people to teach it. It's been banned so long in WWE. The rest of the business seems to take its marching orders from WWE. You do see them occasionally in AEW though.
Yeah.
Don't you? I mean, is it Penta?
Yeah.
He hits the package pile driver. And you do see a few other moves similar, but yeah, just a good old-fashioned Jerry Lawler, Billy Gunn, pile driver. I do miss that. You can't be a good pile driver from time to time.
There's a couple of good ones on IWU the other week, wasn't there?
Oh yes, yeah. We went to an indie show. We went to an indie show locally to us, run by a friend of mine, and yeah, they did bust out a few pile drivers. You're right, and they looked really good, and we saw the guys who took them walking around afterwards. So obviously the art is not completely dead, but I do understand your point. We do miss seeing a pile driver, because like any wrestling move, if executed correctly, it is as safe as any other wrestling move. So yeah, that is a shame.
But yeah, as far as the match, not a lot of memories from me.
No. I mean, but it's one of those things where, like, when you're there live, you probably don't absorb as much as you would later on watching it on TV. Yeah, right. So we are now roughly 2/3 away from the pay-per-view. We are going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to complete the pay-per-view, and then we're going to look a little bit past it. We will be right back, guys. We are back on the Heel Turn Wrestling Retro podcast with myself, Titan, and my co-host for today, Mr. Daniel Chettle. How are you doing, sir?
Not too bad. I feel like I need a nickname, though.
You need a nickname?
Yeah.
Well, what do you want?
I don't know. I'll have one planned by the next podcast.
Okay, right. We'll definitely sort out a nickname. We've just called you Chet or Skinnies for forever, and I'm only using Titan because it was the first thing I said, and it stuck. So we're good. We're just rolling.
Yeah, that's
with
really cool. I need to think of something. Yeah, I'll think of something.
Not Czech then, no.
No.
Oh right. Not your wrestling alter ego. No.
No, okay. That's another story.
That is another story for another time, which we will in fact get to at some point. Now, where we left off before the break, we were discussing the Legion of Doom versus the Godwins. The Legion of Doom are celebrating in the ring. They then make their way up the ramp. The music's playing, the iconic LOD theme. And the camera starts to pan the crowd. Jerry the King Lawler then cuts off Vince McMahon to say, basically, okay, Vince, stop putting the camera on all these blokes and lasses, because that's what we call each other in the jolly old UK. Put the camera on me. The camera goes to Jerry the King Lawler, and we've got a screenshot of when the camera goes to Jerry the King Lawler. If you'd be good enough to put that up, Curtis, now, so we can analyse this a bit closer. There you see Jerry the King Lawler and Vince McMahon just discussing their time in the UK so far. Now, over the King's left shoulder there, we see a young man mugging for the camera, and this is going out on live pay-per-view. This is also on the big screen. Where we are sitting, we see this. Do you want to tell us who that young man mugging for the camera is?
So that's me.
Yes, it certainly is. That's your pay-per-view debut.
It was, yeah.
Yeah, and first question, and I think I asked you this at the time. I don't think I've asked you since. Do you remember how you got to basically ringside, to within touching distance of Jerry Lawler and Vince McMahon?
I think it was just one of those situations where you just keep going.
Right.
I thought, I've been obsessed with wrestling since I was probably about 6 years old.
Absolutely.
This could be the only time I ever get the chance to go near the front.
Absolutely, yeah.
Perfect time. Everything's kind of clearing out a bit after a match.
Yep.
I thought, I'd just go for a wander.
Yep.
And then, the closer and closer I got, I thought, I'm pretty sure that's Jerry the King.
Yep.
Because at that point, I hadn't really been close enough to the ringside area to understand really who was sat where or where the commentators actually were.
You're still in that, wow, it's massive in here, and it looks like it does on telly.
Yeah, and I think I just kept going really, and then I kind of got to a barrier, and I was like, Jesus, I'm behind Jerry the King and Vince.
Yep.
And then I think I was just young enough and bolshy enough.
Yep.
To just think, sod it, I need to get on the camera.
Absolutely. And because it was an on camera, there's a cameraman right in your direction. And again, if you actually go to the part of the show we're talking about, obviously we can only use still frames here. You will see my co-host appear behind Jerry the King Lawler, and he spots himself on the screen and he starts sticking his thumb up, which is great. He's on TV, he's on camera, and I believe just before that you'd been patting Jerry the King Lawler on the shoulder, on his shoulder pad, and trying to get his attention. And then we see a big security guard strangle you away from the barrier.
Yeah.
And then when we think your appearance is over, return of the Chett with a vengeance. Out comes the middle finger. You are flipping off a pay-per-view audience of thousands and a DVD audience of millions and a WWE Network / Peacock audience of infinity for all time, immortalized on screen forever. You flipping off the camera is my favourite memory of One Night Only 1997. And so how would you describe your WWF debut?
It was fun.
I mean, to be, as debuts go, it's up there with Kane and Jericho, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, you got to make an impact, haven't you?
Absolutely, yeah.
I thought, I had no idea, for the record, I had no idea I was actually on the screen. I just knew if there was a minute possibility that I was going to be, there's only one thing to do.
Absolutely.
You've got to get your middle finger up.
Of course, yeah. And
then I went back to my seat. I remember walking back somehow with adrenaline fueled.
Yeah.
Just kind of wandering back up, and I just remember everybody was laughing, kind of, and my dad and everybody was kind of like.
So again, just funny what you remember. The match had finished. I was probably talking to maybe my mum, maybe one of the other lads we were there with, and your dad taps me and goes, "Look, it's Dan," and we're like, "Oh my God, how does he get there? How does he get there? And we're here. How does he get there?" But you were having a lot of success getting near the barrier from that point.
Absolutely.
Whereas me and Rick, I do remember me and Rick constantly getting stopped because there was a secondary barrier where they'd let several people through just to tag the wrestlers, and then they'd put the barrier across. We never got past that barrier. You were obviously a lot slipperier than we were, and we salute you for that, because it's given us a wonderful story to tell here on the Heel Turn podcast. So yeah.
Last thing on that.
Go on.
I had a Bret Hitman Hart t-shirt on.
You certainly did.
There was a lot of people there in Austin t-shirts.
There absolutely was.
That would constantly give it the big un.
Oh, absolutely.
Anti-authority.
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah.
Hitman fan.
Yeah.
Front row.
Yeah, and just to be absolutely sure, you had purchased that shirt there.
Absolutely. It's about 8 sizes too big.
But you got to do what you got to do.
Absolutely.
And the only shirt I wanted obviously was an Austin 316 shirt. And when whoever went to get me one came back, they said they had Vader or Ahmed Johnson. And with all due respect to both men, I said, "No, I'm all right."
Yeah.
But hey ho, it's just the world. That's just the world we were living in. I'm sure they were the first ones to go, and I've got one now. So all's well that ends well in the world of wrestling and clothing items. So hey. So moving on from what I call the real main event, which is your appearance, we move on to Owen Hart versus Vader. Again, a match added later on in the day. Due to injuries to several personnel. I remember this match being really, really the work rate went up. Tremendously. I think as an old school WCW fan, both of us actually, we remember Vader as the absolute monster. Big fan of Vader. Owen Hart, just what a professional wrestler. There, very few would touch Owen Hart then, and Definitely now.
Deceivingly big.
Deceivingly big, yeah, absolutely, yeah. Because he was always portrayed as one of the smallest, if not the smallest. And on the sort of the classic WWF roster, you'd probably only put, say, the 1-2-3 Kid as smaller than him. But as someone who's actually met Sean Waltman, I can tell you now. I mean, I'm 6'4". I'm a big guy. Sean Waltman isn't that much smaller than I am, and he was one of the smallest guys. So you factor in a Vader, an Undertaker, a Kane, a Kevin Nash, a Triple H, a Billy Gunn.
I was going to say Billy Gunn.
Billy Gunn. I mean, you look at Billy Gunn now on AEW. He is probably the biggest guy on that roster by a mile, and it's not even close. People like the wrestling industry lacks big dudes in abundance now, because it's I think just because of the way wrestling's gone. But Owen Hart, like you say, deceivingly big, still dwarfed by Vader. Fantastic match. Owen Hart rallies in the home straight, comes off the top rope with a crossbody. Vader turns it into a big power slam for the 1-2-3. But I do remember that match and the two subsequent matches, which we're going to get to. That's where the show really picked up in terms of this was the wrestling portion. We'd had the sports entertainment. Yeah. This was the wrestling portion. This is where it was really going to pick up and make it memorable. It'd already been memorable on a personal level, but memorable as a pay-per-view in general.
Owen was so good, wasn't he?
Owen was incredible.
I was thinking, yeah, he was so good. He kind of... Yeah, he did have the size to back it up as well. So I never knew till we went and saw him in person. He was really heavy, like hard hitting. And he always kind of came across as like a high flyery kind of
absolutely. Well, I mean,
flashy wrestler.
In character, he was a weasel. He was it wasn't a thing then, but they called him the Nugget.
Yeah.
And but I mean, he was
more in the vein of like a Benoit or an Angle, wasn't it? You kind of
absolutely. I think that's one of those things, and similar with Brett. I mean, because a lot of people say the one match people wish they'd got to see, but it just didn't happen because they never crossed paths, was Brett versus Angle. I would put Owen as a wrestler. Owen versus Angle.
Yeah,
would have been an incredible match as well. But obviously Brett was the bigger star. I think we could say that. But in terms of wrestler, I think Owen and Brett are on a similar level.
Definitely.
So now, speaking of your boy, we get to the semi-main event for the WWF title. Earlier in the night, there had been a promo on the screen with Brett, and a mixed reaction on TV, but I remember it being mixed in the arena. There was a mixed reaction for Brett, and Brett just addresses it. Vince says, "I don't think they like you here." Now, obviously, that didn't apply to yourself. I was a Hitman fan, but there were audible boos. There was cheers, but there was boos. And Brett makes a point of saying, well, all they watch is American television. So he's still playing into the kayfabe, it's American propaganda. You boo me because the Americans tell you to boo me, etc., etc. But again, like any good, we'll call him the heel because that was the role he was portrayed in. Like any good heel, Brett never lied. He never lied. He believed his cause was just, and he believed his cause was a worthy one to follow. Now, going into the match, this is the rematch from SummerSlam 97, which we obviously spoke about earlier. Bret Hart puts this match as one of his, I think he put it in his top 5 of matches that he's ever had. And to go back and again, live, watching it, you're just enthralled by the spectacle. And again, and The Undertaker live is an experience on its own. That was a really big thing for me. to see the Undertaker make his entrance live, and he stands on the steps and instead of bringing up the lights slowly, he did the thunderclap. His arms go straight up, and that got a big cheer. But the one thing I remember, and you might back me up on this. So Bret would he'd go to all four sides of the ring and do his pose. He had on the Winged Eagle belt because he was the champ, which is, I'm sure you'll agree, the best looking WWE or WWF title belt in history.
Yeah, absolutely.
Without question. Bret gets in the ring, and the first side he comes to is the side we're on. And I had my camera, and I was snapping for all my worth just to get a picture of Bret with the Winged Eagle, and they all come out blurry, which is just the way it goes. But I just remember seeing that and thinking, right, that's a champ right there. That's the champ right there. He looks like a champion. He carried himself like a champion. Bret Hart, Undertaker. It's gone from, right, this is the work rate portion where this is the big time now. We're in the big time matches. We're in the Premier League now. So this match, you take the finish away because it ends up the Undertaker ends up getting disqualified because Bret is just too cagey for him. When was the last time you watched this match? Have you watched it since it happened, since we were there? And do you remember it being as good live as it was when you rewatched it?
I've never rewatched it. I kind of go out of my way not to rewatch stuff that I've attended live.
Really?
Yeah, I did it with, I know it's not a football podcast, but I've done the same thing with Leicester winning the title.
Right.
Never gone back and watched any of the trophy lifting or anything. What I remember from the match, being there at the time, probably the figure four around the post.
Yeah, because that was it was almost like that was part of his heel moveset.
Yeah, I just don't know why it sticks in my mind.
Yeah, and again, really innovative move for its time, and yeah, I know what you mean. There are the things where you'd think, oh, I remember the sharpshooter attempt, I remember the tombstone attempt,
Yeah.
I remember the choke slam. If I remember rightly, I don't think either man got his finisher in the match. There was Undertaker definitely hit a choke slam, but there was no tombstone. There
wasn't a sharpshooter, was there?
There wasn't a sharpshooter, no. It was just, but again, Bret puts it in his top 5 matches, and if you go on to his WWE biography DVD, which I believe the entire set is now on the network or Peacock in the US, he lists that as one of his all-time favourite matches, and it was a rematch. It didn't have the hype of SummerSlam '97, but Bret, who is more than qualified to say which match is good and which match isn't, Bret qualifies that as one of his best matches ever, and to say we were there for one of Bret's best matches ever, I think that's something to brag about.
Yeah, we'll take it.
Yeah, absolutely, and we did. The one thing that wasn't taken was Undertaker did not take the WWF title back to the dark side. He ends up choking Bret with the ring rope and will not break, and the referee disqualifies him. Now, upon more recent viewing, and I think I brought this up to you quite recently, the ring announcer for the UK shows at the time was a German gentleman named Carsten Schaefer. Obviously, he ring announced in English, but he was a German guy. He announces that the winner and still WWF champion, Bret the Hitman Hart. This doesn't sit well with The Undertaker, who chases Carsten Schaefer into the crowd. Now, in the background, we do see your second appearance.
Yeah, I'm yet to see this.
On this pay-per-view. So Carsten Schaefer gets chased into the crowd, and you're not flipping anyone off this time or sticking your thumb up. You're just applauding politely, little golf clap in the background while this ring announcer is fleeing for his life because there's a big zombie after him.
Brilliant.
So that's your second appearance. So now we get to our main event. Shawn Michaels, Heartbreak Kid, he does a pre-match interview with Vince, and again, he is 100% clean and sober. There is absolutely nothing impairing his judgment, and he makes some questionable remarks about his opponent and about the crowd. But that doesn't stop him getting a relatively positive reaction, mainly women and children. And speaking of women, there's a few young ladies in the front row who Shawn sees, and they look late teens, early 20s, and Shawn plants a smacker on both of them before entering the ring. No clarification on if there was any tongues. I'm sure they were bragging about it for a long time because they looked well chuffed. Anyway, Shawn makes his entrance, and also one thing I do remember, I don't know if you remember this, while Shawn's hand slapping like a good heel, as you do, and a young man has a British Bulldog figure, and he keeps hitting Shawn with the British Bulldog figure. So Shawn takes the British Bulldog figure, looks at it, dangles it, and then drops it. Not where the kid can pick it up. You know, this is this kid's toy. He just drops it. Again, like a good heel. So, you know, Shawn's making friends across the pond, as one does. And then we get the hometown hero. We get the British Bulldog, who is accompanied, again, by his cancer-stricken sister, who he has dedicated this match to. His sister, I forget her name right now, joins Davey Boy's wife Diana in the front row, and the British Bulldog is getting a incredible reaction. Now, what were your memories of this match? This is the main event. This is what we're all here for. What are your memories of the entrances, this match as a whole, before we get to the end?
It was really loud, wasn't it? It was just so loud in there.
It got very football match.
Yeah, massively like boxing kind of.
Boxing, yeah. This is where they always reference this in British shows, but this is where I distinctly remember live the air horns.
Yeah.
Bulldog.
Yeah.
There was a lot of that. Now, I guess we were, I say we, me and Rick and Tully, can't speak for yourself and Tim, we were kind of like on the down low cheering for Shawn. But again, we weren't partisan in any way. We were just there to have fun. But we were cheering for Shawn.
I think quite a few people were, weren't they?
I think it was more the dudes, the lads
Yeah.
were all Bulldog. The women and children cheering for Shawn. There was some, you know, again, it was probably 60-40 Bulldog.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the Bulldog chants were loud, and you can hear it on television. Again, it's his hometown. He's dedicated it to his sister. What can go wrong? Speaking of what can go wrong, Ravishing Rick Rude makes his way down to the ringside area, quickly followed by Triple H, quickly followed again by Chyna. Now, Shawn had brought in Rick Rude as his quote-unquote insurance policy. And it was just really random. I don't know what your recollections are. It was just really random to see Rick Rude on WWF TV in 1997.
Yeah, and that really ill-fitting suit as well, didn't he?
Yeah, well, when you're built like Rick Rude, it's hard to get suits off the rack. So, and so he's had like this loose association with Rick Rude. Well, no, he had Rick Rude as kind of his bodyguard, essentially, but he had this loose association, kind of an association by, it was like they had mutual enemies. But this was the first time where we saw what would become DX. This was the first time we saw this unit, the original foursome, if you like, DX become a thing, all working together to assist Shawn. Bulldog goes out onto the floor with Shawn, attempts to hit the running power slam on the outside. His foot slips off. The ring was raised on a platform. His foot slips off the platform and he twists his knee, trying to attempt the power slam. Triple H, Chyna, and Rick Rude, behind the referee's back, go to work on the Bulldog. And once he's thrown back in the ring, Shawn Michaels locks on the figure four. And Shawn Michaels is receiving additional leverage. We're a big fan of additional outside leverage, whether it be the top rope or someone pulling your arms. Shawn Michaels is receiving additional leverage on the figure four and live. And I thought, no, I'm probably imagining this, but when I went back and watched it, this figure four goes on for a long time. I think I had a birthday seeing that figure four. It goes on a long time, and the whole time you're watching it, you're thinking Bulldog will be fine, because what did Bulldog do before the match, Daniel?
Well, he dedicated it to his terminally ill sister, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. Yeah. So imagine the horror when Earl Hebner, who is known for just being honest and trustworthy when it comes to refereeing. Sorry to bring it up. Imagine our horror when Earl Hebner rings the bell with Bulldog in a submission hold and they announce, they announce your winner by submission and new European champion, not the British Bulldog, but Shawn Michaels.
He was straight out of there, weren't he?
No.
Did he milk it?
Yes.
I can't quite remember.
So the crowd is booing, and the only reason I say what I said about myself, Rick and Tully, down low cheering Shawn. When it happened, we were on the floor. Now, I don't know if you were in front of us near the guardrail or if you were up in your seat.
That's probably backstage at that point.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Just saying, yeah, well played, brother. Yeah. Great show out there, brother. Great middle finger. Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I'm cheering the fact that Shawn's won. And again, just to be a bit rebellious, I was just happy that, no title was ever going to change hands on British soil. Never changed hands on British soil. And then it did. And it was just more the shock of, oh my God, it's happened. This happened. And then Shawn decides to bait Diana, who is sitting with said terminally ill sister. Chyna then goes over and grabs Bulldog's wife, Bret Hart and Owen Hart's sister, and brings her into the ring. And Shawn starts to make a few nasty comments towards her. And all the time, the British Bulldog is just laying there, passed out. Bret and Owen come to run them off. And the show goes off the air with Shawn, Triple H and Chyna mugging for the camera. Weirdly enough, calling themselves the Triple Threat, which me and you both know was a stable in ECW.
Yeah.
So they were really trying to just rip off anything they could at that point. But that's what they would end up being known as DX. Show goes off the air. One thing I remember live is as Brett and Owen have come out to save Bulldog and Diana, Sean is up on the stage, and Sean ends up climbing up one of the scaffolds.
Yeah, I can remember that. I can't remember the bit in between, admittedly, but I do remember that.
He climbs up the scaffold and he gets to the very top, and he hangs with one hand holding on and the other hand with the belt in
Yeah,
the
he
air.
was proper milking it, wasn't
He was proper milking it, and just to prove that kayfabe was alive and well in 1997, while I was cheering Sean, some big tattooed dude, I'm sure he probably had love and hat tattooed on his knuckles, scolded me for cheering Sean and not being patriotic enough. So I hope he's renewed his EDL membership. Anyway, that is the end of the show. On the other side of the break, we're just going to talk about where this led, and we'll wrap up. So join us after this short break. Back again on the podcast, still with Titan, still with Chett, and one not only is in the books, and we have a new European champion in Shawn Michaels, and following this pay-per-view, a lot of big stuff off the back of this pay-per-view, not necessarily related to the pay-per-view, but in the WWF, times they are a-changing. We go to Raw the Monday after. We'd already addressed Vince McMahon ate his first stunner on that Raw. But behind the scenes, and I remember hearing this and thinking, nah, that'll never happen, because it just wouldn't happen. It just wouldn't make any sense. Bret Hart and Vince McMahon have a discussion which basically leads to Vince saying, I can't afford your contract. You might want to go and see if WCW still have an offer for you. Now, as a Bret Hart guy, when you hear that it's not just speculation, but it's very, very likely that he will end up in WCW sooner rather than later, what are you thinking?
There's a lot of potential there, weren't there, for some really good matches for Bret in WCW.
Yeah.
But as a hardcore WWF fan at that point, I just couldn't imagine pay-per-views, TV without Bret. I just couldn't imagine it at that point.
That's the thing, there was never any thought. Bret Hart was almost the poster boy, the poster guy for WWF at the time, and him in WCW, it just didn't compute at the time. And I was very, up until I actually saw it with my own eyes, I was very skeptical, and I was convinced, he'll stay because he had to, because he was Bret. Also, following on from the pay-per-view, just a couple of weeks later, we have the very first and what I believe best Hell in the Cell match with Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker. A classic match, which also gives us our first look at Kane, which again I think is one of the best debuts in WWF history. And this all comes on the same day that the wrestling business, the wrestling world, loses Brian Pillman. A lot going on with that show. What do you remember from the time, and obviously having watched it back since, Bad Blood as a whole, the pay-per-view, with Undertaker, Shawn, Kane, all in Hell in the Cell, and the whole thing with Pillman? What's your overriding memories from that period?
Pillman was no great shock, was it? Even at that age, I think we kind of understood his gimmick was very closely tied to his real life troubles.
Yeah, I think, but when you think, like, at the time, I mean, me and you were, I believe, 15 and 12.
Yeah.
Pillman was 36. We're both over that age now. And to think of it in those terms, it really brings it home.
Yeah, it's still shocking, but It wasn't the most surprising news.
No, and I think what really brings it home is the night after Bad Blood. As far as Pillman is concerned, they do a 10-bell salute to Brian Pillman, and while they're panning across the wrestlers, there's it cuts to a lot of faces on the stage who would suffer a similar fate not long afterwards. Bulldog, Road Warrior Hawk. Obviously Owen was there. That was obviously a completely different situation. But yeah, again, I think. Do you think we were kind of desensitized to wrestler deaths at the time?
Yeah, I think we were just coming into that period of being desensitized to it. Definitely,
because it was, you know. Whereas now you hardly ever hear about it. Whereas back then, it did seem to be like, well, yeah, you know, Pillman died, but you know, it was. I know it was a Sunday, and you could just be that blasé about it.
Yeah.
It just always seemed to be occurring, and obviously the reasons for it are, you know, there's drugs, there's alcohol, and it's been widely documented. We're not gonna end on such a down note. I didn't want to bring it down like that, but we enter into what, having watched Wrestling with Shadows, and if any of you out there haven't watched the Wrestling with Shadows documentary, you need to stop listening to this, go and watch it, and then come back, because it is. To this day, my favourite wrestling documentary to watch. It is a real eye-opener to see what went into the last year of Bret Hart's WWF career and how Montreal went down. Now, going into Montreal, the build-up was, for me, again, just I was completely 100% kayfabe. I was not a smart fan. A lot of this is anecdotal, going back and looking and hearing about what was going on. At the time, what I saw on TV was what I saw and what I believed. Going into Survivor Series, were you personally under any? Were there any misconceptions with you? Did you know, or did you suspect this might be the end for Bret in WWF, or did you just think this is just another title match? He'll either win or he'll lose, and we'll just go on tomorrow.
Yeah, I was just excited for the match. I was just so excited to see them two go at it,
because we'd been promised the rematch.
Yeah,
a lot.
And that's why wrestling is so much more enjoyable when you have no kind of. You're not distracted by the backstage politics and stuff. I've said this to you many times, haven't I?
Absolutely.
It's so much better when you can just view it as a product, how it's intended to be viewed.
Yeah, I think...
and that was the case for me with that match. I was just really excited for that match.
100%. And I was the same. So, I don't know... No, in fact, I do know exactly how I found out the result of the match. I found out the result and how it happened, but it didn't compute when I was told. A friend of mine at school had stayed up to watch it. I didn't have Sky at the time. I don't think you did either.
No, of course we didn't.
No. I mean, we didn't have the money for that. I got told that Shawn Michaels won the match because Bret submitted in the sharpshooter, and the exact word I used to my friend was a word I can't say on YouTube, but it was a slang term for male genitalia. That's a load of male genitalia. And he was very steadfast in his no. Shawn put him in the sharpshooter, and the referee rang the bell because Bret quit. Now, we know now what happened. When you see that for the first time, what goes through your mind? Because I was like, something's wrong here.
Yeah, it was just so... It was haphazard, wasn't it? It didn't even make sense as a kind of kayfabe viewer.
No.
Nothing, it didn't make sense. It didn't translate into a wrestling product or how it was delivered was absolutely terrible.
Yeah.
And there was no explanation. There was nothing just made sense at that point.
See, I put this down to, and again, like I said, I was 15 years old at the time, and you were 12. We both read, like we said earlier, we read the Power Slam magazine, but that's a magazine published monthly. Sometimes the information was a few weeks out of date just because of the logistics of print media, which is not a thing now really with the internet. I can remember watching it and just being really confused.
Yeah, even the way Sean kind of flopped down, it never actually looked like there was no end to that match. It just kind of happened, and then the event kind of ended.
Yeah, because Sean,
he kind of let go, didn't he?
Yeah, Brett's trying to reverse the sharpshooter. The bell's already gone. Brett hocks a massive loogie on Vince.
Yeah.
And he gets it in his eye, he gets it in his hair. And, obviously now everybody who's a wrestling fan knows what happened, for real. It was a double cross. And what we didn't realise is if you go back and you watch 1997 WWF, there are times where Brett keeps saying, the WWF has screwed me, and this, and the thing was, for all the kayfabe things he was saying, in the end, life imitated art
massively. Yeah.
Yeah, and again, it's just I've never seen a year like it where that was the first year where the backstage became as pivotal as what was on screen for me.
100%, yeah.
Yeah, and I think now we look back as wrestling fans, 1997 is a year which, even in this day and age, because of how we said, we kind of lost our wrestling innocence in 1997. Things would never be the same again. We can never go back to being just mark fans, just completely not smart, not clued in. It's just not the world we live in. You can't put the genie back in the bottle. But 1997 is a year where it's the equivalent of finding out Father Christmas isn't real. Yeah. Do you not think it was that we lost our wrestling innocence, but we did have the experience of going to our first WWF show, one night only, and that is a memory we'll never forget. And 1997. If you're not familiar with 1997 WWF, and you do have the WWF network, I encourage you to go and watch as much of it as possible. And I don't know, read up on 1997. An incredible year for wrestling, which, if you lived through it like we did, will stick with you. It will stick with you for forever. So, Daniel, your podcast debut. How many stars do you reckon Meltzer would give your performance on his current scale?
Solid 3.
A solid 3 stars.
Yeah.
I mean, the Bucks get 5 just for an opening match on Dynamite, so we'll give you 4.5.
That's another podcast, isn't it?
Absolutely, yes, it is. And we will cover the Young Bucks. We will cover some All Elite Wrestling. We will cover some more wrestling origin stories about how we became wrestling fans, and many other tricks up our sleeve when we return on the Heel Turn Wrestling Podcast. Say goodnight, Daniel.
Good night, Daniel.
And good night from me, Titan. Take care, guys. See you on the next one.